Coming up on 90 Feet Away, I have four-time All-Star, two-time Gold Glove winner, 14-year MLB baseball player, turned head coach of the Israel World Baseball Classic team, Ian Kinsler. Don't miss this episode. All right, good morning, Ian Kinsler. I got Ian Kinsler with me this morning. Ian, thank you for being with us today, spending a little time with us on 90 Feet Away.
Absolutely. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, my man. I always try to start with, you're born in Arizona. Fun fact for me, your dad is a hometown guy from the Bronx, which I didn't know as well. I'm obviously born and raised in the Bronx, and I got a big kick out of that. Before I get into Ian Kinsler, how does Howard Kinsler find his way to Arizona?
Howard Kinsler found his way to Arizona through basketball. So he went to DeWitt Clinton High School.
Hell yeah, all boys high school in the Bronx. It's still there, man.
That's right. And he then headed north somewhere to play. I think it was a junior college or something. I don't know. He's pretty blurry on the details when I ask him questions, and it wasn't working. He was stealing his dad's car to get up there or something. I don't know. He was being a delinquent, trying to get to school and play basketball, and it wasn't for him. And somehow a friend of a friend told him that there's a spot on the freshman team. You know, back in his day, there used to be freshman JV varsity in college. That there's a spot on the freshman team. They can give him a scholarship to get him out to Arizona to play on the freshman team. And that's how he ended up in Tucson. And when he got out to University of Arizona, they cut the freshman program. And basically, he just ended up being a practice player for the varsity team and helping those guys out in practice. And that's how he stuck out in Tucson.
You know, that's a pretty ballsy move back in the day. I mean, I assume, born and raised in the Bronx, I mean, people didn't have a whole lot of money, and earning was not so easy. And to pick up and not know anybody out there, I mean, props to your dad, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, his best friend growing up, a guy named Ira Lackow, ended up going out to Arizona also and going to the University of Arizona. So I grew up with that family, with the Lackow family, and Seth and Jake and their two boys, and we all grew up together. They've known each other since childhood, and they ended up in Tucson somehow.
That's why, and both kids from the Bronx ended up staying out there, which is like even more incredible to me. All right, so you're born and raised in Tucson. Let's talk about early stuff like Little League, and I read a whole bunch about your dad, working out with you, playing with you. What did you have an idea that you were pretty good at this game, Ian?
From my earliest thoughts, thinking back, I always had the confidence of being the best. I always kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I always thought that I was really good at the sport. Going to your friend's house and playing wiffle ball in the backyard or doing whatever, any kind of sport that revolved around baseball. I always felt like I was the best player amongst my peers. And then starting in Little League, I can remember at 9 years old, I was playing AAA baseball before you're allowed to play majors Little League. And I got intentionally walked with the bases loaded, and my dad blew a freaking casket, and him and the other coach almost got into it. They were yelling at each other. My dad was freaking out because you're walking a 9-year-old kid with the bases loaded. But, around that time, it was like, okay, I think I'm a little bit different here.
Okay. Now, again, for me, that's a little bit different in itself because you have one sister. Is she athletic?
Yes, she is.
What did she play?
She was a softball player. She could absolutely rake. She's probably
older,
better.
younger.
She's younger, and she's probably a better hitter than I am. But then she quit playing softball. She couldn't run. She wasn't very fast. She couldn't really throw. She's basically just like a designated hitter, and could just mash. And I think she got bored of the sport, I think around her freshman year of high school, and then she quit and became a cheerleader.
Wow. Okay.
Complete 180. Kind of shocked the family, but she had fun with it and did cheerleading through her senior year.
So I say it's weird because, to be an only son and have a chip on your shoulder, normally that happens with the youngest child, right? It's the youngest son that had to fight for everything. But that wasn't the case with you, man. You were the only son, and you were kind of born with a chip on your shoulder. Where'd that come from, man?
I think the saying goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So, I'm still a kid at heart. My dad's still a kid at heart. So maybe he acted as the older sibling, obviously as being the father figure as well. And, with my son, it's competition every day. We're competing at something, whether it's Monopoly or me challenging him on the baseball field or whatever it may be. So, in a way, if you look at it through those lenses, I always had somebody that was bigger and stronger than me kind of competing against me my whole life. Now, does that play into the chip on my shoulder? I don't know. I think a lot of it was just conversations with my dad. He was a major in criminal justice and minor in psychology. So he had a certain way of talking to me and speaking to me, and when we were practicing and what his expectations were. And, I think that always instilled some kind of motivation in me and drive.
And Dad was a loving guy from what I understand, but he was a no joke dude. I mean, he was a pretty serious guy, ended up being a warden. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, when you grow up in the Bronx and go to DeWitt Clinton as a Jewish boy, you got a little edge to you. You had some hardships growing up, and then after he graduated college to become he was an assistant prison warden at the time, and then moved up to be the actual warden at Wilmot Prison out in Tucson. There was a little bit of a mean streak to him, and he had expectations when he walked in the door. So, he was also very loving, and he also played countless hours of baseball with me. He would take me to the park anytime we had free time. And growing up in Tucson, it's sunny year round. You can go at 8 a.m. on Saturday and get perfect weather pretty much year round. So baseball was definitely part of our relationship.
I mean, and I think a huge part of your relationship, and props to Howard. Everything I read about this guy just seemed like an incredibly special guy. And I know even sitting in the van with you on the way back to the Olympic Village, there was one phone call I remember with your dad and one phone call I remember with your son. And we'll talk about that later. And, having dad still in your life and has to be the greatest thing because now he gets to live it through his grandson.
Yeah, that's the greatest thing for me is like, as a parent, there's some anxiety with raising an athlete because you don't want to push too hard where you might get them to lose a little bit of interest, or you don't want to tell them too much information where now their swing doesn't feel good and they're not having results, or you're messing with their confidence. So there's a thin line there as a parent or dad or mom, but as a grandparent to be able to drop my son off with my dad, or a weekend tournament where I can't make it to the games and my dad's with him for both games on Saturday, I know that he's in good hands, and I know my dad's going to ask him the right questions and just pepper him with all the same things that he peppered me with. So it definitely relieves a lot of nerves for me to have him around.
And it's such an intelligent thought for you. And again, to have your dad, you're blessed, your son is blessed. I'm going to tell you a quick side story. For 2 years, Matt Holliday played on the New York Yankees. And for those 2 years, Jackson played here for me in my program. And one of the coolest things, and I'm not going to lie, one of the most intimidating things for me was I was working with Jackson a little bit on his swing, and on an off day, Matt's sitting right outside the cage, and like halfway through the lesson, I turned to Matt and go, "Hey, Matt, if there's anything you don't agree with," and he just sat there quietly. He goes, "Eric, just do your thing. I know my son's in good hands." And growing up the son of a legend, it's got to be enough pressure on him to begin with. And having someone like Howard, man, that kid is blessed. I hope to be that guy for my grandkids.
You will be. You will be.
I appreciate that. All right, we're in high school. Let's move right to high school. Are you special in high school, Ian?
I thought so.
I mean, let's talk about sophomore, junior year. How much love are you getting? How much attention are you getting from like big schools?
Zero. I'm getting zero attention. Well, I played at a school called Tucson or Canyon Del Oro High School, and as a freshman, I was one of two other freshmen who got called up to the varsity team at the end of the season for the regional tournament and the state tournament. We just sat the bench and watched. But it was a little bit of carrot, a little motivation for the three of us. One of the other kids became a big leaguer, a first round draft pick for University of Arizona, Brian Anderson. The other freshman was a kid named Ryan Schroyer, who ended up going to Arizona State University, being a starting pitcher there and getting drafted by the Boston Red Sox. Played in the system for a little while, and now he's a fireman in Nashville. But at the time, we didn't know. We just thought we were on top of the world, right? We're freshmen making the varsity team. Come the sophomore year, there were some challenges. I got moved to second base. Shortstop was always my position. I never played any other position other than shortstop, so I moved to second. Played pretty well my sophomore year. Nothing great, but at the time, Shelley and Chris Duncan were at my high school. They ended up being big leaguers. And then come my junior year, a kid named Scott Harrison moved to town from Chicago. And, his brother's a big leaguer. His dad was a big leaguer. He's a shortstop. So he ends up playing shortstop. I'm stuck at second again as a junior. I love Scotty. He's still a dear friend. And we ended up going to junior college and playing baseball together. But this guy cannot play shortstop. And when it's funny, when I ended up graduating and moving on to Central Arizona Junior College, Scotty was there, and when I got there, we switched positions. I ended up playing short, and he ended up playing second in junior college. But
okay,
with that being said, he was the upperclassman, he was the senior, he played short. So I didn't get to play my natural position until I was a senior in high school. But we were top ranked in the country all 4 years I was there. My sophomore year or junior year, we were ranked sixth or seventh in the country. We won a state title my freshman year. We won a state title my senior year. We were a very good ball club, and I'd like to think I was in the middle of it. I don't think that I was really noticed or a leader until my senior year of high school. And you asked about being recruited or noticed. I was not recruited out of high school. My only offer was Pima Community College in Tucson.
Okay.
But I hit 505. I stole a ton of bases, hit a couple pops, played shortstop, and I'm playing with other big league guys, and I just wasn't noticed because they were bigger than me. They were stronger than me. At the time, I was probably 6 foot, 165, 70 pounds. And then, I was drafted my senior year of high school by the Diamondbacks in like the 28th round, 29th round, something like that. So I knew I was a good ball player. To be drafted at a high school, you're like, okay, somebody sees something, but I wasn't getting recruited by colleges. So it was a little bit of a weird situation. And then comes signing day or whatever. I mean, junior college rules were pretty loose. And come signing day, a guy that played, a coach for Central Arizona that played at my high school, comes walking onto the field during practice, and he just walks right up to me and he said, "You're coming to Central." And I was like, "Well, I don't even know where Central. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to Pima." And he's like, "No, you're not going to Pima. That's a terrible program. You're coming to Central." I'm going to take care of you. Not knowing that Central Arizona was a powerhouse junior college baseball program. I had my blinders on them. I didn't really know too much about what was ahead of me. I was focused on, being the best high school player I could be and winning a state championship with my homies, with my buddies, growing up with my buddies. But that was a blessing, was being able to land at Central Arizona, because it was a great program and the head coach was fantastic.
This is such an incredible sidebar for me. And, I talk about a lot of the time. Every kid growing up, it's D1 or bust. I got to play D1 baseball, and people don't understand, number one, that's horse shit, because I want to go somewhere I'm going to compete. I'm going to have an opportunity to compete. I don't want to go to a 35-man roster and be the 35th kid just to say I was on a program. Junior college baseball is today, 20 years later, remains some of the best baseball there is in the country. People don't know about it. It may not be as sexy, but for me, one of my messages to the kids is always, it's not about where you start, it's always about where you finish. So to go somewhere like Central, you had someone looking out for you, you got to play right away, and you killed it, now opens up that opportunity that you didn't have in high school, where now Arizona State is interested in Ian Kinsler.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, the message for kids that I give is, how much do you love the game? How much do you truly, like, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. You got to decide how much you really love baseball. Do you want to play baseball, or you just want to put on a cool uniform? Because at the end of the day, like you said, you can go to UCLA and be the 35th man and sit there for 4 years and melt away or whatever and try to get better. And, in D1, there's also all these practice rules that they put on teams. You're not, the NCAA has all these crazy rules. You go to junior college. I was in the batting cage. I skipped so much class to play baseball. And I'm not telling kids to do that, but, there was no rules at JUCO. I could be in the cage all day. And I think for me, it's just, how much do you really love the game? Is it about the uniform, or is it about getting better and going to a place where you can play and succeed and get your skills to a level that you can move on to then the next level and be a guy where you're continuing to progress, continuing to take those steps. And that takes a lot of self-reflection, and it also takes a positive role model in your life that's able to have those tough conversations with you. I was excited. I was so excited to be drafted out of high school, and, to have the conversations with my dad saying I'm not ready. And in my heart, I knew I wasn't ready. I wasn't big enough. I wasn't strong enough to think about swinging a wood bat right out of high school, going against grown men. That wasn't where I was at. And to have those conversations with somebody to say, man, you need to go to junior college. You need to better yourself. You need to get bigger. You need to get stronger. It was a really a perfect step in my career. And then went to Arizona State, like you said.
Whoa. But then you get drafted again before
Right.
you go to Arizona State. You get drafted by the Diamondbacks for a second time. You go from the 29th round to the 26th round, and you turn them down again.
Yeah, and like you said, it was 3 rounds,
Right.
And at the time, I don't know if you remember, and I graduated high school in the year 2000. There used to be a rule called draft and follow. So you could be drafted, and the club can say, you're a draft and follow. We're not negotiating with you until next year's draft, until the right before next year's draft. So that's what happened to me out of high school. So after my freshman year at JUCO, before the draft, the summer draft, we had a negotiation to see where they thought I was at and how much money they were willing to offer me. And it just didn't make sense for me and really my dad and my family. Like, it just didn't make sense. Education was more important. And then in turn, after we had those negotiations, they drafted me again 3 rounds higher. And it was like, okay, we're just going to do this again. This doesn't make any sense. So, it was it was nice. It felt good to be drafted again, but at the same time, we already had those negotiations, and there really was nothing that could move that forward.
Okay, so now we go to Arizona State. Tell me about that experience, Ian.
That was an unusual experience because I transferred at Christmas break. That's at the semester break. I stayed at Central, so I already committed to Arizona State, but it was too late. Pat Murphy was there at the time, and who knows what he was doing. He had all kinds of different ways to structure his roster, and it kind of always turned out. It seemed like somebody always got put in a bad situation. But he told me before school started my sophomore year that he couldn't get me into the classes. It was too late. But I committed to him anyway. I stayed at Central, and now I couldn't practice with the Central team because I'd committed to go to a D1, but I was allowed to take my classes there so I could transfer in at the break. And so I was driving up I-10 to Tempe twice a week to practice with the Arizona State team to get to know those guys. But they're in fall ball or whatever, and they're playing games and they're being competitive there in the weight room. And, I was just like this junior college kid that would pop in every once in a while. So it was a weird situation. And then when I got there, I was the shortstop, and another player was there named Dustin Pedroia. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I might have heard of him.
Yeah, he was a freshman player at the time, playing shortstop, and Murph wanted to put him at second, so he recruited me and put me at short, and I was the shortstop, and if I would have played well, I probably would have been the shortstop the whole year, but I did not play well. The first 7 games of the season, I played terrible. I was booting balls left and right, not doing anything with the bat. Pac-10 season started, and Murph put Pedroia back at short. I sat the bench, and Pedroia went on to win Freshman Player of the Year. And I got maybe 2 or 3 more at bats the rest of the season. So it was a humbling experience, but to be able to sit on the bench and watch the game was something new for me. And I thought that I had intangibles. I thought that I had a flair for the game and understood the game really well. But to sit and watch a high level of baseball at that time, it was such a great learning experience, and I wasn't happy with it. I mean, I did everything I could in practice to try to get back in the lineup, and it just didn't happen. I tried to get better. It didn't shut me down. I know that. But to sit and watch the games was a huge learning experience for me.
One of the things I talk about with the kids is, you have two options, fight or flight, right? And we don't run away from stuff. So learning and having to deal with that experience, Ian, like what changed, right? I know you end up going to the University of Missouri, and that's where you really, end up blossoming even more. Tell me about the end of that Arizona season. Like, what's that conversation like with Murph, and then what gets you to Missouri?
I went and played. I'd made up my mind I want to transfer. Just because I'd been drafted twice. I want to get drafted. I don't want to go to school my senior year. I want to play ball. And I knew Arizona State wasn't the place for those goals to happen. So I went and played. So after the season was over, I walked into Murphy's office. He's an intimidating dude. At the time, he's an intimidating guy for, whatever I was, 17-year-old or 18-year-old kid. And I walked into his office, and I sat down on the chair, and I said, Murph, I want to transfer. I would really appreciate it if you let me free, or whatever the rules were. And I gave him all my reasons, and then he looked me in the eye and said, I want you to be my shortstop next year. And I said, that's a bunch of crap. He had a way of trying to keep talented players in the program as insurance, and then those players ended up getting pushed to the side at some point. And that was always part of Arizona State's program when Murph was running it. Everyone knew that. And at the time, I'd already committed mentally, like, I'm leaving this place. I need to find another place. So he wasn't happy about it, but he did allow me to transfer and sign whatever paperwork he needed to, so I could go straight into another program and play that year. And that's pretty much how it went down. And I played in a wood bat league that summer in Arizona, the Fire League. I don't know what it was called, but it was definitely Fire League. And no one ever showed up to the games. It was like 10 people in the stands, maybe. It was like going back to Little League where just the parents are there.
Yeah.
And one of the junior college, Central Arizona junior college assistants was the head coach of the team I was playing on. And this dude was hitting me ground balls after every game, just wearing me out. Like, I wanted to get better. I wanted to find a place to play. And after one game, there was a man sitting in the stands just watching me take ground balls. Just one guy was just sitting up at the top of the stands watching me take ground balls. And then I kind of finished up my ground balls, and he comes walking down the steps. It's like, what the heck is going on? Like, in my mind while I'm taking ground balls, I'm like, oh, that's a scout. Like, I'm going to show out right now. Whatever games you play with yourself in your head. And the guy starts walking on the field, and I'm like, maybe he is a scout. I don't know what the heck's going on. What is this? He's like a military-looking dude, kind of short. And he walks down the steps, and he comes onto the field. And I walk over, and he introduced himself. He said, hi, I'm Coach Tim Jamison. I'm the head coach at University of Missouri. I would love for you to come to Missouri and be our shortstop. And I said, what conference do y'all play in? Because I had no idea.
Sure.
Honestly, I didn't even know where Missouri was on the map. I knew it was in the middle of the country somewhere, like up top, maybe a little north. I had no clue. He said, it's in Columbia, Missouri. I said, Columbia, Missouri? What the hell is that? He said, I want you to be the shortstop. And I said, what conference? He said Big 12. And I said, I'm in. Let's do this right there. So right on the field, I was like, sounds good. I'll be the shortstop, Big 12, play against UT and OU and OSU and Texas Tech, all the good teams that were in that conference at the time. So that was it for me. That day, it was like, all right, I'm going to Missouri. Didn't even know where I was going, but I was going there.
But what was he doing there? Like, what was he randomly doing watching your Fire game?
I have no idea how he even heard. Like, nowadays the transfer portal, it's like a whole thing, and all the information's out there. Everyone knows who's transferring, who's in the portal. At the time, it was a pretty quiet thing. Like, I was playing in this random wood bat league in Arizona, and this dude's out there in Arizona recruiting me from Missouri. I don't know how it got out or who told him what or how that information was given to him, but I was happy that I was going to Missouri.
That's awesome. All right, so we kill it at Missouri. You're happy. You get drafted again. Finally you accept. But still not happy, right? Like 17th round, like we think we're better than this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So walk me through that, because now college is over, and again, that chip is still on the shoulder. I really don't want to compare you, but is it the type of thing where it's like the Tom Brady, like they got to know better? Like, how what are they not seeing? Talk to me.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. I mean, I don't know if, Tom Brady's one of the greatest athletes of all time, but it's the same sort of feeling where you're watching other players that you compete against. I mean, Tom Brady was a quarterback at University of Michigan playing a high level of football, competing against guys that are going in the first round. He's watching guys go in the first round or second round or third round that he competed against and he made look bad, or he had success against. And it was the same with me. I mean, Omar Quintanilla was the shortstop at the University of Texas. He ended up being my teammate in Texas later, but at the time he was motivation for me because he was at the University of Texas, and there's no way in my mind, there's no way this guy was better than me. And he got picked in the first round. He was a supplemental pick in the first round. And I'm like, all right, I'm going in the third. I'm going in the second or fourth. And then it's like, at the time it was all dial-up computer. I'm sitting there listening to the draft on the, computer, AOL dial-up or whatever. and this kid named Jeremy Hernandez at Missouri offered me a ride home. He was from California, and he was driving home to California after the season was over my junior year. And he offered me a ride, so I was going to jump in the car with him. We were going to drive across the country. And I talked him into waiting a day because I thought I was going to get picked on the first round. or not the first round, the first day at least, like the top 10 rounds, whatever.
Sure,
I
sure.
think it was the top 10 at the time they did the first day. So we sat around the computer all day. I made this guy wait a whole day. He wanted to drive and get home. He was my free ride home, and I made him wait around to hear nothing, to hear just a bunch of names be called, for 10 rounds. And I tried to talk him into it the second day, and he wasn't having it. He's like, you either come now or you're going to find another way home. So I jumped in the car with him. We're driving across country the second day of the draft, and your service is in and out. You're driving across the country at that time. The service wasn't as good. I had my
Right.
little flip phone or whatever. So I had no idea what was going on. We were just cruising. When we got to Flagstaff and we were coming down out of the mountains to get into Phoenix, my phone started blowing up. I started getting all my messages because we hit a spot where, I had service. And then that's when I found out that I was drafted in the 17th round by the Rangers, got a call from them, a call from a bunch of friends and stuff. And yeah, I was upset, but at the time, mentally, I was already going to sign. Like, it didn't matter where I was picked. I was going because I knew I was ready and I wanted to play baseball every single day. I didn't want to worry about school. I wanted to just play ball every day and see how good I could get. And so I was already committed. And yeah, it was upsetting. I thought, this doesn't make sense that I'm getting picked this late. But that's just what it was. So I had to work with that.
Well, you worked with it, but it had to turn into incredible motivation because you know what, Ian? Like, for me, it doesn't seem like you failed in anything in your life, right? Like I've always been good enough, and if I wasn't, I figured out what I needed to do and worked harder. Like you talked about, being in the cage at Central and just hitting all day. So you're a 17th round pick, but you had a pretty quick ascension through the minor leagues. I mean, this wasn't an 8-year, 10-year stint in the minors. I mean, it was, a year at each level. Then you skipped 2 levels and basically went to Double-A. Before you know it, like, you're in the big leagues. Again, when I talk to Danny, one of the things about Danny, and we know him well, Danny literally thinks he's the best athlete on the planet, right? and I get that. Was there any self-doubt in Ian Kinsler? Did you know you had what it took and you were going to be there? Like, walk me through this, because now this is new to you, right? You're still a kid. You're a baby. You're a junior in college, and now you're showing up in the minor leagues. Like, what are you thinking when you get there, and what are you prepared for mentally?
Yeah. So my thought process was, I want to get to a place where I can play every day. I can get in front of the best coaching, and I can learn how to play this game at a higher level. And I was all in on that. Like, I was a baseball junkie. I was a baseball rat. I wanted to take ground balls all day. I wanted to hit all day. I was open, and I was like a sponge to information. I wanted all the information, but I also at the same time had a belief in myself that I didn't need to I didn't necessarily need to try all the information. I knew what was good for me and what wasn't, but I wanted it all. I wanted to be critiqued. I was a sponge. And that was my mental approach to going to Arizona. Really, that's where the spring training was for the Rangers, going there and starting my career. And that's how I approached it. And then the ball just started rolling, right? And once the ball started rolling and I started seeing the other players and like, man, I'm better than everybody here. That's how I thought mentally. It all just kind of rolled in together, and it turned into just a ball of confidence. Like, I was already a confident player, but seeing what was around me, seeing what my skills were and what I was capable of doing, and my work ethic compared to everybody else, and just ridiculous things like doing pop-up communication drills, and like guys look like they're on ice skates running around trying to catch fly balls. I'm like, bro, just get under it and catch it. Like, it's really not that hard. I'm going, all right, these guys really aren't that good.
Right. Right.
Just little things like that. But I do remember, I went to short season in Spokane, Washington. That was my first stop, and I played well. And as a 17th round pick, you're down on the organizational depth chart. And when the season was over, they were handing out envelopes for invitations to instructs. And I didn't know what it was. I was asking around. Everyone's like, yeah, everyone wants to go to instructional league. That means you're on the organizational, radar. You're going to go get the best coaching. You're going to play baseball every day in the off season and get ready for next spring training. I'm like, damn, I want to do that. So I got invited. The Rangers invited me to instructs as a 17th round pick, which is pretty unusual. And I was fired up, buddy. I was so fired up. I was like, all right, this is my time to shine because the best in the organization are going to be there. And if I can be better than everybody else, I'm going to be on the radar. I'm going to be, the Rangers are going to know what they have. And the first day I walked into instructs, I walk in with my bag. I'm going into the locker room, and there's this giant of a human. I mean, at the time, I'm still the same size I was in high school, probably. Maybe 10 pounds heavier. Maybe 6 foot, $180, something like that, $175. And I walk in, and there's this giant, this guy that looks like he should be in the WWE or something. And his name's Jason Botts, and he's like 6'6", 200 and, I don't know, 60 pounds, just chiseled. And he's the first, I walk in, he's got a towel on. He's the first person I see carrying my little bag or whatever. And I'm like, damn, I got to get bigger. Like, if this is what everyone looks like, I got to get in the weight room. So yeah, that was the shock, the first time I was shocked to like, man, I got to work hard in the weight room. I got to work hard on the field. I got to eat right. I got to do everything that I can because this is who I'm up against, to try to make it to the big leagues. And Instructs was incredible for me.
So let me ask you a question, Ian. Having coached college ball for 20 years, in recruiting, you recruit middles, center field. Why? Because they're the most athletic guys on the field, and you can pretty much move them around, as you need to. Was this the first time that you weren't upset that you were moved to second base?
So I wasn't moved to second base until
You still weren't. Okay.
until I got to AAA.
Interesting.
So short season, I played shortstop. Instructs, I played shortstop. Started my second year at Clinton, Iowa, was a shortstop. Skipped a level, went to AA in the middle of the season because a guy named Drew Myers, who was their first round pick, shortstop from South Carolina, broke his wrist. So I moved to AA, was the shortstop. And then that off season, going into AAA, they wanted me to play second. So I went back to Instructs for the third time, and all I did at that point was I would get out to the field at 7:30. There was a guy named Mike Brumley, who was our infield coordinator at the time. He was out there with me at 8 o'clock every day, taking ground balls at second, turning double plays at second, getting ready for my AAA season. And it's a funny story. I started so that would have been my second full season in AAA. That was my first big league spring training. I dominated spring training against all the big leaguers. Buck Showalter calls me into the office. At the time, they had Alfonso Soriano there, so I knew I wasn't making the team. He calls me into the office and he said, "Okay, we're gonna send you to AAA. I want you to be completely honest with me. What'd you think about your first big league spring training?" And I looked him in the eyes and I said, "This is how big my head was at the time." I said, "You want me to be 100% honest?" He said, "Yes." I said, "It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be." And he kind of rocked back in his chair, crossed his arms, and kind of stared at me, and there was like dead silence for a little while. And he said, "All right, well, you're going to go to AAA, and you're going to struggle worse than you've ever struggled in your life." And I was like, "Yeah, right." In my head, I was like, "Okay, I'll be on your team in 2 months." And so I get sent to AAA, and sure enough, they had me playing second base for 3 games, shortstop for 3 games, third base for 2 games, second base for 3 games, kind of rotating around the infield. and I struggled my ass. I was hitting probably a $180 after the first month of the season. Just freaking out. Like they put me in the 9 hole. At this point, I'd only hit first or second. They put me in the 9 hole, the 8 hole. I was bouncing around the infield. I'm like, what the heck is going on, right? So this is a long story, but it's funny. So Bobby Jones is the manager in AAA. He calls me in the office and he says, hey, I got a call from the general manager. He said that tomorrow you have off. You have the day off. I don't want you to do anything. I want you to come in late. It was a day game. He's like, sleep in, come in late. You're not doing anything. Don't even put on your cleats, tennis shoes only. I'm like, great. And he said, after tomorrow, when you're done, you're going to be playing second only and you're going to be hitting second. And I was like, oh, thank God. Huge weight off my shoulders. So I'm sitting there in that game. I'm down at the end of the bench. This is Bobby Jones, our AAA manager, incredible person. He has countless number of stories like this. I'm sitting down at the end of the bench. I got my glasses on, my tennis shoes. I'm in and out of sleep, and it's the bottom of the 9th inning. We're losing. And first guy gets out. Bobby Jones, second guy gets out. Bobby calls me to the front of the dugout. He says, Kinsler, come here. I'm like, what, dude? What's going on? It's like the 9th inning, 2 outs, we're losing. What's going on? I walk down there, and we're hitting, so everybody's in the dugout, right? Everyone watches me like get up and walk all the way to the front. And he goes, are you loose? And I was like, Bobby, I thought you told me I'm down today. Like, what? I don't even have my cleats on. And he's like, well, I was going to pinch hit you so we could get the hell out of here. And like the whole dugout just busts up laughing. I walk my tail down to the end of the dugout and sit down. So it kind of like loosened me up. It was just a great restart. And then from that point on, I had a really good AAA season. But that was my minor league progression. And then the next year, went to big league spring training again and made the club out of camp.
Did you ever go back to Buck and ask him how he knew?
No, but he had a pretty good idea of. He knew baseball really well. And I don't know how he knew that. I don't know if he was just saying that to try to knock me down a little bit and try to deflate my head. But Buck was there my rookie year. He was the manager, and he took me under his wing, man. A lot of the veteran guys and him, they didn't see eye to eye. The clubhouse was a little split. It wasn't a great clubhouse. Buck was he was on his way out. But he took me under his wing, and he was constantly on me about the game and about, staying on top of the little things. Who's warming up in the pen? Who's hitting third this inning? How fast is this runner on first? Where do you got to go with the ball? Where do you have to be on the field? All those types of things. He would be constantly popping questions at me to see my answers, and took me under his wing. So Buck was so good for me as a rookie. It was really a perfect fit to have him as my first manager. But I don't know why he said that.
Is he a guy? Do you keep in touch with him at all, Ian?
Yeah, we talk every once in a while. We do.
That's awesome. I just think there's so much to learn from a guy like that. I don't want to rush anything, but all we do is have the next 14 years in the big leagues, spread out on 5 different teams. The next season, Soriano's traded. You beat out DeRosa for second base, and you start your legacy in Texas. 14 seasons, 4 All-Star games, 2 Gold Gloves. I'd say a pretty decent career, an outstanding career, and an outstanding human being. Interesting. So when I really started to learn about Ian, before I had the chance to spend a few weeks with you in Tokyo, people in baseball always say, there are pretty swings. The lefty swings are just prettier swings. Anyone I spoke to about Ian Kinsler said this guy had the most beautiful swing I had ever seen, was a gap-to-gap guy that never tried to hit home runs. I really want to talk about today's baseball, Ian, and I want to get your take on it because you played the game the right way. I was an Ian Kinsler fan 12 years before I knew who you were and I got to meet you and spend time with you. You just played the game the right way. Today, the game is dominated by metrics. I love what you do for the San Diego Padres. Can you talk about what you feel about metrics and stats and how it's affected the game since you've played?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So I think there's definitely a place for it in the game. I think it's important information, but it just doesn't show you the whole story of baseball. It doesn't show you the between the lines, reading between the lines, understanding, where to be on a cutoff, understanding when to barehand the ball, when to use your glove, relay throws, good picking a ball at first base, certain types of slides that allow you to be safe instead of out, moving first, reading a ball that's going to bloop between an infielder and an outfielder and getting first to third as opposed to first and second. Those types of intangibles of the game are lost on statistics and analysts. And that's okay because there should be enough baseball people in the game to understand those things, to then communicate those with the players, to hold them accountable for those types of actions on the field, to teach those things, and then also to add the stats and the analytics into that. And hopefully you have a better player in the end. But the problem right now that I see with the game is that everybody is so lenient and so heavy into analytics, especially in my opinion, the pitcher and catcher. When I was younger and I was coming up in the minor leagues, there were veteran big league catchers sitting in the dugout having communication with the catcher and the starting pitcher between every inning, asking them, why did you throw this pitch 1-2? Why did you throw this pitch 2-2? What was the 0-0 pitch? Trying to recall the inning was a huge part of the game. It was every inning they were doing stuff like this because the catcher was responsible for recalling basically the whole game, and the pitcher needed to be responsible for understanding how he got people out. And now they just flip open their little wrist thing and say curveball away, and whatever the analytics says on that particular hitter, that's how they operate. And for me, the hitters are different throughout the course of a game. You can have a big pile of stats on, let's say, Ian Kinsler, but you're not accounting for down by one in the eighth with a runner on third and one out and infield in. What type of hitter is he? He might be a different type of hitter. He might be more susceptible to hitting the ball the other way when, for myself, I was known as a pull hitter. So they might play the defense a little bit different. They might pitch me a little bit different. But in that situation, I'm going to be a different hitter. So whatever you say on your wrist, it's not right because I'm a different player at that point. I'm trying to accomplish something, trying to win the game. And so those types of things are getting lost. And really what it's costing is wins. There needs to be a combination of both. It needs to be blended together. And the conversation with the players needs to be just a little bit different.
So would I be wrong to say at this point you're a special consultant to the Padres, right?
To the Rangers.
Oh, okay, now you move to the Rangers. That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
So you're back with the Rangers. You're a special consultant to the Rangers. In a typical transaction, or if they're thinking about drafting, trading for a guy, they'll have the analysts who may not know baseball take a look at the numbers. Then they're gonna bring in Ian Kinsler to say, what do you see, and then what do you think here? So it's a mixture of both the analytic nerds and a gamer.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the great thing about really the Padres were the same way. the Rangers are exceptional because their general manager, Chris Young, played for 14 years as well as a big league pitcher, has a really good understanding of what's going on in the field. But those conversations are had where I could be sitting in a room. Basically, I'm sitting in a room just listening to them go back and forth, debating over a player, just what underlying stats they have, why they think this player is going to take a next step or not. And, really it's my job to watch that player without knowing any of those numbers and just giving my opinion on the eye test, what I see, what I think, what I know, maybe from a friend of a friend who played with the guy, what kind of work ethic he has, what are his intangibles, those types of things. And then to question the analytics and find out if we can dive in maybe a little bit more to find out a little bit more about that particular player, and to also ask questions to open up their mind to maybe create another statistic. Like, for example, a lot of emphasis on speed in today's game because of the new rules. You can't pick, 3 times. You pick 3 times as a balk. Mm-hmm. The guy moves a second. Mm-hmm. The pitch clock. It's just running is a lot more prevalent. Speed is utilized more. So for me, I'm like, we need to analyze how much speed really does affect the game. What are the pitches when we have a guy whose sprint speed is, 28? What the heck was that? Was 28, let's say 28 feet per second, or however they measure it analytically. When we have a guy like that on first base who is capable of stealing, what are the pitches that are now being thrown to the hitter that's at the plate? What are the fastball percentages? Do they go up? What are the location percentages? Do they go up? Does the guy change his delivery when he's on first base and go more into a slide step? What are his numbers when he's in a slide step? And so now we're trying to figure out how much does speed really affect the game, and trying to get them to understand it through analytics. Because then late in the game, what my opinion would be was, okay, well, you need to figure that out, because do we need Travis Jankowski on the team to pinch run in the 8th for Jonah Heim and affect the game, right? To affect the pitches that are being thrown to the next hitter. If Jonah's on first, here's the pitches. If Jankowski's on first, here's the pitches. So now that helps with roster construction and who the manager wants on the team for a late game, pinch run situation.
Yeah.
So those conversations are being had, and really in the Rangers organization, it's super effective because CY is really intelligent, and he asks all the right questions as well.
But CY is also smart to have guys like you around because, again, I think one with the other doesn't work, but the two together seem to be working pretty well, right? That was the knock on everything, that you had, analysts who may never have played the game telling you what you need to do in those situations, which I just don't think works. I got to ask you a question. Jack Kinsler, you teaching this kid launch angle or not?
Absolutely not.
Good. I am happy to hear it because
MLB Network is, though.
MLB Network and the world is teaching guys that everybody should look like Aaron Judge and break their backside and dude, I am all about hitting the baseball hard. I'm all about living in the gaps. I'm all about trying not to jack baseballs. I'm going to tell you a quick story of why I hate analytics. We have a kid here, local kid, played up to AAA with the Detroit Tigers. I'm not going to mention names here. All this kid did was hit 300 at every level, from extended to AAA for the Tigers, and most of the time over 300, 320, 330. And last year he was called into the office, and the Detroit Tigers told him that they wanted him to strike out more and open up a little earlier to go pull side for more power. So a kid that historically hit over 300 at every level basically refused to do that because it's just not who he was. It wasn't what his game was. And being true to himself, he retired. He wasn't going to deal with that because he felt that the Tigers wouldn't release him, and he wouldn't change to do what he knew in his heart was the wrong way, and it just killed me. It killed me because hitting 300 for me is sexy. I don't need to hit 28 home runs. I'm good with 15, 18. Give me 300, 320.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what needs to happen in a situation like that is, and the analytics needs to speak to an ex-player or a hitting coach or a hitting coordinator or whoever that can communicate with the player. They can understand what they want the player to accomplish. They can understand the underlying, we need him to pull the ball a little bit more. We need to pull the ball in the air a little bit more. That's the whole analytic new age pull the ball in the air thing. I don't get it because, like you said, every player is different, and you need to stay true to who you are. But there needs to be a conversation with somebody that knows hitting to try to get that out of the player without telling him you need to hit the ball in the air, pull side, and strike out more. Like, that's just a ridiculous thing to tell a player. You need to work with that player. It needs to be a daily process to teach him how to hit the ball in the air, pull side. It's not just, hey, you need to hit the ball in the air, pull side, go make it happen. That's not how baseball works. I mean, there's a whole process to creating these types of things and to getting better at it. You watch players, through their big league careers progress to becoming more of a power hitter. Mookie Betts didn't come up being the player that he is right now. It's a progression. I mean, it takes time. It takes years. It takes experience to learn these things. Now this guy can hit the ball out to left field really in a blink of an eye. And when he first came up, that's not the way he was. I mean, you look at Jose Ramirez. When he first came up, he was a singles, doubles hitter, utility player. And now he's hitting 30 a year because he learned his swing. He learned what he's capable of, and it took him years of experience and progression to get there. So for organizations to tell players that, I think is just it's ridiculous, and it's just not healthy. Like they don't have an understanding of what truly adjustment, what it means to make adjustments in the game of baseball. It's not as easy as the computer screen says.
And that's where my frustration lies. Listen to me, Ian. I hope this wasn't painful, but I got to ask you, I don't want to keep you because I know I told you we'd only be on for so long, but I got a whole lot more to go through: the coaching side of Ian Kinsler, the managing side of Ian Kinsler, Ian Kinsler's future. I'd love to get you back on at some point and spend another half hour, 40 minutes if this wasn't too painful for you.
No, we can do it again.
Because I really enjoyed the time, man. This is unbelievable. I want to thank you. Truly, I want to thank Howard and Kathy. And I know that sounds crazy to you because you are a product of where you come from. And Rye and Jack are going to be a product of you and your wife. And I know these kids have a tremendous future. I had the utmost privilege to just be around you. As a 58-year-old guy who just loves this game, having you around me, I felt like I learned something every day just having you around, and I'm thankful. Thankful for that time, thankful for knowing you, thankful for having you around the guys and really making you such a big part and the heart of our team. Ian, thank you so much for being with us today, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. The feelings are mutual, man. That time we spent in Tokyo was incredible. It was a trip, man. It was a ride of a lifetime, and the things that we went through and saw, and to have you captaining the ship, man, it was a hell of a time. So the feelings are mutual.
Thank you. And we'll get you on again. We'll see when your schedule works, because there's a whole other part of this. And like I said, your future and what I want to talk about. And Ian, have a great day. Give everybody my love out in Texas.
I will. Thanks for having me on, Eric.
All right, my man.